Okay, welcome to the Ed Carpet Spotlight Series. I'm Jacky Chan, one of the Ed Carpet student ambassadors. And a bit of a quick intro on myself. I grew up in Sydney and then I moved to the US for my undergrad degree, where I completed a Bachelor of Arts, majoring in Anthro at UPenn. And I'm now back in Sydney. I just finished my Masters in Nursing and I've been a registered nurse for 6 months. So today I'm joined by another Ed Carpet ambassador, Oli MacGregor. And Oli graduated from Knox Grammar here in Sydney back in 2018, then went on to Rice University where he completed a Bachelor of Arts in Computer Science from 2019 to 2023. And then after that, he did a Masters of Science in Electrical Engineering at Columbia University, and now he's working as a software engineer at Tesla in California. Thanks for joining us today, Oli.
Thanks for having me, Jackie. Happy to be here.
So, Oli, a lot of our listeners are students in years 10 to 12 who are thinking about their future. When you were back at Knox in high school, what first made you start thinking about studying in the US and what sparked that interest?
So I think the first exposure I had to my peers potentially studying in the US was when some of my friends who were into athletics, like swimming, had like recruiters come over and sort of, recruit them to come to their colleges in the States. And I myself wasn't an athlete, but I guess that sort of planted the seed for me as to like what other opportunities might be possible outside of Australia. I was always, I guess, a high achiever in school, and I guess that sort of unlocked this new world of possibility for me in studying overseas. And I guess for me, the two big criteria were being able to, continue to flourish academically in like a college setting, and also to I guess have like an adventure overseas. So for me, like I was originally looking at like at American and UK-based universities, and initially ended up focusing mainly on the US, just because the I guess like the college experience sort of appealed more to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that seed was sort of planned for me, and then I ended up going here. So
Yeah, cool. So it sounded like you wanted something fun, but it would also be academically challenging, and something, I guess, a little bit different from your experience in Sydney. Was there any reason why you leant a bit more towards America versus England at the end of the day?
I don't think I had a great answer for that at the time. I think some of the decisions that I made were maybe like more like emotionally driven, or just based on like this abstract perception that I had of like US universities being more like fun or adventurous.
Yeah, definitely.
Which was as an 18-year-old at the time was very very appealing to me. But I think, although I didn't realize this as an 18-year-old, I think throughout my time in the States I have realized that probably was the best decision for me as well, in terms of like things that I've realized now, like growing a network and the exposure ultimately to like the sort of, like for me being an engineer, like tech jobs in the States. So I think that was definitely the right move for me. But at the time, for me, it was just I wanted to do something sort of, I guess, like great and unique, and going to school overseas, especially in America, just sort of abstractly was that to me. And I think I've honestly formulated a more like coherent like reason or justification for as to like why this was a beneficial thing for me, like while I've been here. And I think it certainly has been, but I don't know, at the time it was very much just sort of this desire to do something like big and adventurous, but still sort of like develop, like push my life in the right direction. So
Yeah, cool. And what ultimately made you choose Rice out of all of the unis you were looking at in the States?
I actually get this question a lot from people in America, because I guess Rice isn't as like well of a known like college internationally, and people often ask me like,
I mean, I think Steve Jobs did a big speech there, didn't he, for one of the graduating classes?
I'm actually not sure, to be honest. If that's right, I'll have to look that up. I guess
It's an iconic speech. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think either he went there or he did a really good speech there. But anyway, he talks about Rice University at some point. So
right. So I chose Rice. I mean, I ended up applying to Rice because, funnily enough, my little brother went and did like it was like a space camp with his school, and they went to Houston, Space City, and he ended up doing a tour of Rice, and said he had gone to this really cool college, and I ended up looking into it and sort of just applied to it as a wild card, and when I got all my decisions back, and I guess I looked more into rice,
Yeah.
I guess I eventually decided it would be a good match for me. Like great engineering school, smaller
Yeah.
school, and I think also sort of on that vein of adventure. My perception of like what Texas would be like when had only lived in Australia my entire life was, it was very different to what it ended up being. Like Houston is
Yeah.
just a pretty like regular big American city.
Yeah.
But I thought it was going to be, I guess, a lot more cowboy than it was. But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like, when I got my decisions back, rice just fit the criteria of what I was looking for the most, and yeah, I ended up pulling the trigger on it. And I think it was a bit of a gamble since, maybe it wasn't as I didn't have as much like evidence as some of like the bigger schools that I got into that it would be like the right decision for
Yeah.
me. But I think it honestly ended up working out amazingly for me. I had like the best time at Rice, and as I think didn't have like maybe my direction as to what exactly I wanted to do wasn't super defined and set in stone. And I think that Rice was just amazing for me to like incubate my my interests and like help me figure out what I wanted to do with my career and help me get to where I am today. So.
Yeah, so you said you had a perception of what Texas was like as an Aussie going in. I remember my auntie, the only reference point for Texas before I went over to the States was that she made these Texas muffins and they were just gigantic muffins. And that's all I knew about Texas really before I moved over to Penn. But yeah, I'm curious, was there anything that was particularly surprising to you when you moved to Rice and you kind of thought, oh, this is what I expected or this is not what I expected, either of like college or America in general?
Well, I mean, one thing you just said, like big muffins. It is true that everything is bigger in Texas. That was a pretty shocking thing. Just, I guess, I mean, like the food servings, like the football games, like just everything. Everything is big and grand in Texas, which I thought was pretty cool. But in terms of like things that were shocking to me, I think that people are definitely very different in the States in general, but especially in Texas. Like that Southern hospitality, people are very sort of like bubbly and polite down there, which was a great thing, to be honest, but it takes a little bit of getting used to. And I mean, at Rice, Rice was a like pretty diverse school, like people from all over the states, and I think like 15% international. So, met people from all veins and backgrounds, which was a great opportunity for me. Like I had met people from countries that had never even heard of, or like had never even like met someone from before. So that was interesting as well, and definitely like a bit of a culture shock. So
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of, I guess, so you said lots of international students. Did you meet any other Aussies, like any other Sydney-siders by any chance? I know you said Rice is quite small, but
yeah, actually there was one other guy from Sydney who
Yeah.
I knew in my year. There was like about 4 to 8 Aussies per year from memory at Rice.
oh, that's crazy. Okay,
and
yeah,
yeah,
for a
yeah,
small school, that's huge.
Yeah, yeah. But we also knew each other. You bump in and you hear about people, and you're like, oh, like you're the Aussie my friend
Yeah.
mentioned, and yeah. No, it was
You're like,
cool.
yes, I
it
know,
was-
I'm the talk of campus.
yeah, exactly. Beanock. But no, it was cool to have that connection as well, especially when you're like a very small like sub community of like a much larger campus. You already have that connection of being Australian, and it was cool to have those like shared experiences when a lot of the
Yeah.
times your background can feel like very different and alien to a lot of the people that you like go to college with. It's I guess nice to have some like grounding in your Australian peers.
Yeah, definitely. Were there any challenges when you started out, like if you think back to freshman year, for example, whether it was getting to know other people or just settling in, being a bit homesick, that you're willing to share? I remember personally for me it was that some of my mates actually genuinely thought that I had a pet kangaroo, and they also didn't really understand Australian humour. So I'd say a joke, and I thought I was being pretty clear that I was being sarcastic or trying to be funny, and they'd say, "Oh no, is that real?" So definitely a bit of adjustment in that respect too.
Yeah, I actually definitely had that same thing with maybe bantering a little bit too strongly, and occasionally like maybe saying something that might have come off as like a bit coarse. But you kind of get used to it, and I think my friends sort of knew as well, and sort of thought it was funny that I was like a bit rogue and boisterous, the Aussie guy. So I think the other thing as well was, I mean, I don't know what you think now, and maybe you had a similar experience, but a lot of my friends told me freshman year that did not understand every second sentence that I said. My accent now has become a little bit more Americanized, but
Yeah.
I guess apparently I had a much stronger accent when I first came over there. And, I guess learning to not use slang in every sentence, like Aussie slang was something I had to do as well, but...
Yeah, what are you doing this
Yeah.
Arvo? We're going to go to the servo. All of those
Yeah, exactly.
iconic
They're like, what are you
Aussie
talking
slang
about?
words. Yeah. Well, I remember one of my best mates, still is a good friend of mine, is a Kiwi, and he's like this big 6'3" guy, and not only did he have a very thick Kiwi accent, but he also kind of muttered a little bit. And definitely none of the American kids understood a single thing that he was saying. So the poor guy was always repeating himself or saying things again. Yeah, but I do remember, people would always say, oh, that's not how you pronounce it, or they would reference H2O and they would say, oh no,
Oh, classic.
Cleo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
How many times have you had someone pull that out on you?
Yeah, too many.
Yeah. Do you have any like favorite moments from college that you can think of off the top of your head, besides all the partying that I'm sure you did and whatnot between studying very hard? If there was, anything that stands out to you that you recall like quite fondly.
Honestly, like the most rewarding parts of my college experience for me were the like student clubs and activities that I did, and, like design projects. I think those are what like really made me fall in love with engineering and design,
Gotcha.
which was something I'd not even really been exposed to prior to coming to the States. The big one for me was my like EV club at Rice.
Yeah.
We pretty much designed like a prototype like battery electric vehicle that we
That's so
ended up racing as a part of a competition called the Shellacre Marathon, which is basically the goal is to design a electric vehicle that meets like certain specifications to make it roadworthy, and then to race it for as long as possible on a given battery for a given battery capacity, and then that means you want to make it as efficient as possible. And so we got to drive that up to Indianapolis, and we actually got to drive that around the Indy 500 track, which was pretty awesome. And I worked on that for 3 years of college, and finally seeing it all come together and actually like drive around that track was one of the most rewarding things for me. And I think that's really what made me fall in love with this sort of stuff, and I guess inspired me to end up working at Tesla now. And I did internships at Rivian, which is another electric vehicle company here in the States. And it honestly just like the resources that I guess Rice gave, and a lot of these other US colleges give to their students, like the facilities that you have access to, and this like the resources that you can get to do these awesome projects, was just something that I had never thought I'd be able to do in college. So that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, lovely. I want to ask you a bit more about your career progression and all of that, the opportunities in a bit, but I was curious on that note, what do you think that the US unis do differently or better than, say, your Aussie university?
I can actually speak to this pretty well, because I guess one thing I haven't mentioned was that I actually went to the University of Sydney for about 5 weeks before I dropped out.
Same, me too.
Yeah,
dropped out before census date.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Yep.
And the reason for that was, as you probably know, is I was waiting for my decisions back what schools I got into the States, and then as soon as I got into a school that I would have preferred to go to, I basically dropped out.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned before, I was a bit lost about I knew I liked like this math and the sciences in school, and I was good at them, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do in college or with my career. And I think I did like an applied math degree at UC. I don't even remember what I signed up for, but I got there on the first day, and there was O week where there was all these stalls for clubs and stuff, but there wasn't much academic guidance in my experience, and I kind of just started showing up for classes and kind of had no clue what was going on. And I don't know if that was just me, if I just missed the memo or something, but at Rice, from day one, there was just so much guidance from peers and from faculty about what classes to sign up for, and your 4-year plan, and figuring out the stuff that you need to do now to set yourself up for success later. And I never really felt lost at Rice. Well, I did, and then when I felt lost, I changed directions. I changed majors 3 times at Rice. I was again, I transferred from University of Sydney and started out at Rice as an applied math major. And then I moved. I figured, maybe I want to do something more hands-on. So then I changed to mechanical engineering, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe this isn't for me. Ended up changing to electrical engineering my second semester, and then I ended up picking up computer science down the line, almost 2 years into my degree. So I just think just having the opportunity to do that and like bounce around and figure out what really speaks to you is something that is done a lot better in the States than in Australia.
Yeah. Because I reckon when you're 18, 19, even 20, you don't really know what you want to do. I mean, some people have said, I want to be a doctor, I want to do this and that from day one. But it sounds like, from your experience and mine as well, that US degrees give you that degree of flexibility. You can experiment, you can change around, you can still graduate within the 4 years with your class and with your mates. But you have that freedom to kind of chop and change within reason, if you want to, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So on the note about the EV stuff that you did as well as internships, how'd you come about applying for internships, and kind of what was your experience in getting that exposure to potential career options during college?
So in terms of like applying for internships, I mean, everyone says this, but it's just so true. Is just leveraging the network. The offers that I got from for internships during college were all from either like a couple were like Australian connections, just like random people I'd reached out to who were like
nice.
alumni, or I guess people at like company in Houston that I reached out to, like, oh, like I'm an Aussie, like let's chat. Or it was from people like alumni of my club who I'd reached out to who were like working in the industry now. So I think that's on top of like the technical experience you get from doing like clubs, but not just in engineering, but like in all other like fields, right? Joining clubs that are applicable to like your major and like like-minded people. I think that also like builds your network and like gives you a foot in, and they might know someone. And I think that's one of the most important things you have to do during college if you want to get the good internships and the good jobs. But then in terms of like applying, I mean, it's tough out there. You gotta apply to a lot of stuff, and you gotta be competitive, and that's why you gotta, do all these like extracurricular things to stand out. But a lot of people do just do the buckshot, like apply all over the place, and I did that. Especially my first summer. Before I ended up getting a return offer my second summer, so I didn't have to do that, fortunately. But I think trying to like find things where you really can stand out, or again, you do have like that connection that sort of makes you stand out above potentially other people, is like the most efficient way to spend your time. It's like not something that you can just decide that you want to do like a month before the applications close, like a second year. Like I think you really have to put in the effort from the start to sort of explore different avenues in college and like have evidence and like things that do then make you stand out as a like a good applicant.
Definitely.
So there's a lot of discipline involved in not just doing like your classes and stuff, and like I guess being proactive about exploring things that interest you. And I think that's important to, I mean, it's not just for getting a job, it's important for you as well, because at the end of the day, like, this is what you're going to be doing for the rest of your career. So I think finding that sort of stuff out now and through trial and error, and maybe you'll hate your first internship, and you'll get another one and try something different. And I think that's what college is for, and that's what the US does it so well in. So yeah, definitely.
Did you attend things like careers fairs, or I guess I found when I was in undergrad, I often talked to my seniors, so like juniors and seniors, and asked them, where are you going for your summer internships, or what career pathway do you think that you're going to do, just to get some inspiration. I found that really valuable, and it actually gave me so many ideas as to what I wanted to end up pursuing. And so I'm curious, you talked about being part of that club as well as I guess your mates in the major too. What kind of resources were available to you to help even know that there were internships out there, or there were certain career pathways that you could pursue?
Again, so I think like, again, the more specific you can get, like the more like niche and like through network you can go, the better. Rice had career fairs. I never really had much like luck with any of those, when you sort of just go and there's no sort of like existing like connection between you and the recruiter, and there's nothing that immediately you've done to make yourself stand out. So I think like as you were saying, like going through like your connection to your class and in your clubs, where there's sort of that existing relationship, is definitely like a better way to go. In terms of like exploring options that are out there, like I think career fairs are great, and you can get a lot of information from like recruiters and stuff. But yeah, I think in terms of actually, getting positions at these companies, I do think that the best way to go is is through the network. So building that out early is, I think, one of the most important things you can do.
Yeah, definitely. So it sounds like the Rice Alumni Network slash being an Aussie definitely helped you in terms of building that first connection with someone and then going from there in terms of, potential career opportunity.
Yeah, 100%.
So after you finished up at Rice, did you work for a little bit before going to grad school, or did you go straight from undergrad into grad?
No, I went straight from undergrad into grad. I kind of had a very specific thing that I wanted to study that
Yeah.
I had sort of got a taste for at the end of Rice, but then not really dived into.
Yeah.
Um, and I can talk briefly about that. But basically, I did my master's in electrical engineering with a focus in power electronics and power conversion, which is essentially building large glorified and powerful chargers, which is exactly what I do at Tesla now. And basically, that was a specific area of specialization that I had sort of been exposed to towards the end of my EV club, but I had never really taken many classes in or studied in a purely academic sense. And in my internships at Rivian, I had worked on hardware design for the autonomy compute systems for the Rivian platforms, and that was interesting to me. But I think the thing that interested me about electric vehicles was more so drivetrain related, things that make the car move, the car charge, battery related as opposed to controls related autonomy. So having the masters in power electronics was actually eventually that's exactly the team I work on now at Tesla, is doing power electronics for the vehicle. So that was why I wanted to do that. And I don't think I was fully equipped for this role when I graduated my undergrad.
Yeah. So was the end goal kind of always to end up at Tesla, or was that kind of just something you fell into at the end of the degree?
Yeah, no, it really wasn't. Honestly, it came full circle. Tesla was one of the first companies I applied for, when I was a freshman trying to get internships. It's always been the top tier company, dream company for me. I applied every year, and obviously for companies like Tesla that are massive, and everyone knows about them, is everyone applies with the internships, and it's so hard to get a foot in the door. And so I ended up getting this position at Rivian, and it was awesome. And finally, my semester before I graduated from Columbia, I ended up getting, again, to do with the network. I got a referral from someone who I went to college with, who now works at Tesla as well, and that got me the interview. And that ultimately led me to getting the job. And yeah, I mean, it was such a dream come true for me, because I'd been trying to get a job there pretty much every year since I got to the States. So
yeah, awesome. Yeah. Huge congrats. Yeah, dream come true. And what a company to land into as well, coming out of grad school. That's amazing. Well done. I was curious a little bit more about your experience in grad school, actually. So Rice, the college campus, versus Columbia, I think two very different environments, quite literally, because Columbia, you're smack bang in the middle of New York City, and you can kind of spill out onto the city as well. And I suppose also you're in a grad program, so it's a bit different from being, your college days when you're 19, whatever, 20, fresh out of home. Can you, speak a little bit about your experience in your grad program? It sounds like it was quite specialized, and was it pretty hands-on? Did you have time to network, or all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so, I mean, I do think, again, the undergrad is a bit more of a broad opportunity to explore your options and sort of figure out what you're interested in. But yeah, the master's programs are typically you know what you want to do, you know what you want to dive into, and you've sort of already developed that that base knowledge through your bachelor's. So yeah, it was a lot more academic focused. I didn't have to take these wide variety of distribution courses, and I didn't do as much as many extracurriculars while I was there. It was very much I was taking my coursework, and I was also working in a lab there, which was a part of my curriculum. And yeah, I mean, it was much more academic focused. But yeah, in terms of networking, there were networking industry events where I got to meet professionals in the power electronics and adjacent fields. But yeah, I think it was definitely, as you said, a lot more focused, which I think is a good thing. You take a master's because you have this area that you want to deep dive into, and I definitely had the opportunity to do there. And obviously, Rice and Columbia, I think, are pretty different schools as well. Rice was pretty small and intimate, Columbia's like a lot bigger, much bigger class size. But I did also sort of get that same, I guess, like intimacy from my lab a bit. It was a lab of 10, 15 people working under a professor. So that was nice to have as well, especially in like a massive city like New York, where everyone's moving a million miles an hour doing their own thing. It's nice to have some community. I mean, obviously living in New York as well was just an absolute dream. Don't know if I would live there forever. I think coming towards the end of my year and a half there, I was maybe getting like a little bit, I'm ready to move on to something else. And I mean, California's been great, honestly. But yeah, it was a great experience.
Yeah, it's definitely hectic, in a very, very busy place, lots and lots of people. Did you find that, did you find that it was, I guess, lifestyle-wise a little bit, like, different, say, it being a big city, etc., versus Rice? Like, I'm not exactly sure what the college campus is like, but I imagine that was, like, maybe a little bit slower, etc., and you kind of have your own bubble versus Columbia. It's, quite open, all that stuff.
Well, I think, people, there was a saying at Rice called, like, getting beyond the hedges, which was because Rice is surrounded by pretty much these massive hedges. But I think a lot of life at Rice was centered around like campus life. I mean, Houston's it's a cool city, but it's there's not like heaps of like stuff to do, I guess. I mean, I don't know, not to diss Houston, but because I loved it. Great city. But Rice was a very like close knit community, and like a lot of the we had like these on-campus parties, like all these colleges would host their own parties and host in their dorm rooms and that sort of stuff. Whereas Columbia was like, I mean, there were like frats and stuff for undergrad, but there was no like colleges, like residential colleges. You could like live on campus, but I think there was like a little bit like less community like that. And then even more so with being in the masters, you're sort of just there to take like classes and do your coursework. And so my like social life was definitely more like based off campus and based off like I guess clubs that I'd opted into. I mean, honestly, like a lot of my really close friends from Columbia was just playing rugby at Columbia. So a lot of my close friends were from there as well. So.
Yeah, cool, great. I guess to wrap it up, what is your top piece of advice for Aussie students who are considering US universities? Having been to two very good ones, and now like having a thriving career, I'm sure they'll be keen to hear what your thoughts are.
I think as much as I said it was, getting into, being at a US college was like a great opportunity to like discover myself and learn, what I was into. I do think, I don't think I had personally like the strongest application to my undergrad. I think I did well in school, and I had, I guess a string of like, just vaguely connected like extracurriculars that weren't that applicable to what I was like applying to like study. And I think like the earlier you can sort of dial in this like narrative about yourself, and like, I mean, not just for the essays, not just for the application, but also for yourself to sort of try to like dial in on this idea of what you want to do earlier on, the stronger your application will be. And then I guess, I think I can speak best for engineers, is like the earlier you can start like building and like trying to like be an engineer and like find these like things that you're interested in doing, the better. And that's why I guess starting earlier is better, because, for me, I decided I wanted to apply kind of late, sort of towards the end of year 11. And I was sort of balancing like my HSC and doing this other stuff. So I guess the things that I was doing to like sort of add to my application was genuine. But, if you're like earlier into your like school career, like, really try to make these like active, explorative decisions and like try to figure it out, what it is that you're interested in and what can make you appear as a strong applicant to these colleges.
Yeah, definitely. So like say from an engineering perspective, maybe building a portfolio, or at least something that would demonstrate, you're keen, you've got ideas, etc., you want to experiment, all of that stuff would definitely help, hey?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and can agree with you that starting earlier is always a good thing. I left my applications a little bit late, would not recommend that to anybody. But yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up doing my SATs during my trials, so that was
No.
pretty brutal.
Yeah, people do not do that.
Do not
Sit
do
your
that.
SATs earlier. Yeah, awesome. So, Ollie, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us today. And I think our listeners will find your story really inspiring and helpful as they're thinking about their own paths. And for everybody watching, if you have any questions about what we discussed today, feel free to drop them in the comments below and we'll do our best to get back to you. And if you're seriously considering studying overseas, which you should be, it's a lot of fun, and want to chat about your options, please reach out to Todd and the team at Ed Carpet. Thanks so much for tuning into Ed Carpet Spotlight Series, and we'll see you next time.
Cool, thanks.